Hi Siri, I'm looking for a new podcast, one that preferably is hosted by a UF Hall of Famer, one that airs every weekday that would bring me everything I need to know about the Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions. Siri, is there such a show?
Have you heard of PodUp with Matthews in the morning on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or any podcast platform?
Oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? UF Hall of Famer Shane Matthews has a show every weekday. I'm gonna go check it out tomorrow. Thanks, Siri.
Good morning. Hello, friends. Isn't that what Jim Nance says for Masters Week? Anyway, it's PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We got JC, and then Seth Harp will take over, and the Masters Par 3 kicks off today. Looking forward to that. JC and I will do our Peachland Dental picks for the Masters. And good morning, JC. You're on the Titan tomorrow hotline. What's going on?
Well, I'm noticing that there you are sitting on the Azalea hole, number 13, which is a par 5 at Augusta. And I'm not sure you know this, but just look toward the tee box and you'll realize that they've extended that hole about 60 or 70 yards. So they're going to try to keep it as a true par 5 instead of something that these guys can eat up in 2 shots. And
they're still going to do that.
Well, they probably will, but they're not going to be hitting it over those trees from where that tee box is now located. So maybe they will. They probably will, but it's still going to be longer. It's like number 11. They backed up those tee boxes on 11, which to me is the hardest hole on the course. That's a par 4. So, yeah, man, it's a great weekend. The Masters is a great thing in April every year. I'm not wild about it being on Easter, but that's beside the point. Jordan Spieth is a guy that has won 3 times on Easter Sunday, including the time he won the Masters, which I'm pretty sure was on an Easter Sunday. So keep that in mind for all you handicappers out there.
As if that matters.
It's coincidental, though.
Gator news this weekend: softball hosts Auburn, and baseball goes to Tennessee. So those should be some interesting series for sure. Gator softball needs to get it going.
They do,
and we all know about Tennessee baseball last year, so it should be a lot of fun. But you know, the majority of what's going on, obviously, spring football still going on. A week from tomorrow will be your orange and blue game on a Thursday night. So we'll see how all that takes place. But in the meantime, this is it's all Masters talk pretty much. And before we get into that, JC, how did your Bruin? Is that a Bruins hat? Did your Bruins win last night? Are they going to break the record or whatever they're doing?
Well, they play tomorrow night, and they've got 5 games left. They win 3 of them. They are the all-time leading wins in the season, which really is just a novelty record. It doesn't mean anything when it comes to the playoffs. The playoffs are starting here in a couple of weeks, and that's when the NHL playoffs are one of the best things to ever watch. And the thing is, they could last for months, and so it could go definitely through May, all of April, through the entire month of May, and then into June. It's crazy, but it's a grind. And so really what they do during the season, in spite of how amazing and remarkable it is, has very little to do with, other than the fact that they'll have home ice every time. So the Stanley Cup will go through Boston as long as they're playing. Yeah.
Text on the Titan Amar text line came in yesterday, and obviously we take Tuesdays off, but it comes from Robert. Robert says, JC, thanks a lot. San Diego stance stood no chance. Why did I listen to you take San Diego?
What? Wait a minute. Wait, did I take them to beat UConn?
Yeah, you kept saying this team has – no, you said you took them with the points. They're in like 8 points.
Yeah.
Take the points. It's an experienced team. They're physical. Shit. UConn just wore them out. And congratulations to Danny Hurley and the UConn Huskies. That game wasn't even close.
No, and really none of their games were close, QB.
Yeah.
None of them. But, this is why we always talk about how much Vegas knows this, Vegas knows that. They didn't know anything with UConn. They knew nothing about UConn. So don't get mad at me, Robert. Tell the odds makers.
They did know something about UConn because they made them like an 8-point favorite.
Yeah, but none of those games were even near their spread. Not one of them. I mean, they were blowouts.
You can't. I mean, how many times do you see a 5 seed or 4 seed like 10 or 12 points in a game?
Yeah,
They
well,
don't.
after playing 3 or 4 games, maybe you have an idea. I don't know. I mean, they went through the tournament roughshod over everybody. I mean, sure, whatever seed they were is fine, but they went roughshod over everybody. I think the lines makers did a terrible job, and the books got killed. Okay, because when overs win and when favorites win, books lose. When underdogs win and unders come in, books usually win. That's just the
Well,
way it is.
I was in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, JC, when we played the Vipers.
Yeah.
Uh, those places ain't in trouble. Okay,
No, no.
they're still
I
building
mean,
more buildings out there.
I get it, but let me ask you a question. If you were going to do this for a living, do you think you would win more if you always bet favorites and overs or if you always bet underdogs and unders? I think the percentages would probably give you a better chance of winning taking unders and the underdogs. But
I mean, I think it's maybe. I don't really know. I mean,
well,
if
I
that was
think
the case, if that was the case,
better.
everybody bet unders and
Well, yeah,
underdogs.
no, I'm saying as a percentage, but let's face it, most bettors bet on favorites, QBD. You know that. They look at teams, not numbers, and they also look at overs over unders. And that includes me. I hate unders. I hate them. But they know that. The Vegas knows that people hate unders, and Vegas knows that people usually take favorites. I just believe that to be the case. That's what every single person who's done this, I hear on the radio and I read about says. Every single one. But regardless, it doesn't matter. Listen, UConn was clearly the best team. And
Yeah.
I think you can make that case throughout the entire season, even though they lost 8 games during the season. You know, a conference schedule is a grind. But when it came down to the tournament, there was no debate. And so, Robert, sorry about the pick, buddy. But I'll get it better. I'll get it better as we go through the hockey. Now, I'll be good on hockey. I'm pretty tight on hockey. I won my hockey picks.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to lay a lot of money on because you like to bet favorites in hockey. So
that's why you parlay.
At Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout gains in North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Speaking with JC on the Titan MR hotline, Seth Harp will join the program in the second portion of today's show. All right, on the Titan MR text line, Josh says, QB and JC, how about Blue Chip Billy keeps it coming with 2025 QB commit Austin Simmons? Notice a trend? Max Brown, DJ Lagway, and Simmons are all dual sport baseball, football athletes, high GPAs, very accurate, mid to high 60s and 60 plus completion percentage. My thoughts are, yeah, I mean, I'm all about signing quarterbacks that play multiple sports. I think that's the smart way to go. The more sports you play, all the little kids that listen to our program before you go to school, play every sport. Do not listen to your mom and dad or grandma or whoever saying you should, or your trainer. You know, your trainer. You know how everybody has these trainers, JC? You need to stick with one sport. Absolutely not. Play it all while you can. It will make you a better overall player in whatever sport you do decide to go to once you go to college. But nothing ticks me off more than when kids at a young age, I'm going to specialize in baseball. Okay, because I have multiple scenarios and experiences when I was coaching high school ball for 10 or 12 years of kids if my son was playing like JV basketball or ninth grade basketball, I'd watch the games and I'd be like, who is that guy? Oh, he just plays basketball. Well, he'd be a damn good wide receiver. And I had three of them that were all like 6'2", thinking they're going to go make it in college basketball. Not a whole lot of 6'2" guys out there anymore at guard. Well, turn them into a receiver for 1 year and they get a scholarship to go play somewhere college football. So it just drives me insane when these people think this.
I agree with that, but I would also add that when it comes to sports like, say, tennis and golf, those are different.
That's different. I call those country club sports, JC.
Well,
because most of those kids ain't even thinking about playing football or basketball.
That's right. That's right. So those two sports there, no. But yeah, in the three, baseball, football, basketball. If you play two of those,
and track.
Okay, maybe track. Then yeah, I agree. That's more. Those are not country club sports.
If you are a football player
Mm-hmm.
and that's all you think you should play, you should
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, in the spring, I am going to run track. I don't give a dang if I get blown out in a track meet. I'm going
Yeah.
to run track or I'm
Well,
going to play lacrosse. Lacrosse is a very good sport for football players,
yes, it is.
work on their agility. But it's crazy.
Well,
It's
I
crazy.
think most people agree with us on this one. Jameis Winston was a good pitcher for Florida State, and he was a very good quarterback. So yeah, that's true. That's very true.
I'll never forget one of my buddies in college. He was a walk-on the team. His dad was very close to Lou Piniella I don't know if he was coaching, managing probably the Yankees at that time, back in the early 90s.
Uh-huh.
Or
Well,
maybe it was the Cubs or
well,
some, I don't know.
the
But he
Reds.
was the manager.
The Reds.
And I remember having dinner with them one time. And somehow we got into the whole recruiting. He asked me, like, what did you do in high school? I said, I played football, baseball, and basketball on very good teams. And he goes, I would much rather get a baseball player who played multiple sports than a guy who hit 500 and all he did was play baseball. So play it all, folks, while you're listening. I'm sure our portion is taped. We'll probably have 1 million Facebook comments on this
We
situation.
can talk about it on Friday.
Yeah. All right, JC, let's get to our Peachland Dental. Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com. Our Masters picks. I know you're going to lay chalk for the Masters. I'd be interested how that, I watched the Golf Channel a little bit last night before I went to bed, and they had some interviews with Tiger and different guys on the tour. And they were asking them, what do you expect tonight at the Champions Dinner?
Yeah.
And a lot of them had some unique answers because they hadn't seen those guys in quite some time. They used to see them freaking every day of the year on
You're
tour.
talking about the Live. You're talking
the
about
Live fellas. Yeah, the Live guys. So I wonder how that went.
Well, Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson. Who else am I missing? That won
Cam Smith. Oh no, Cam Smith wasn't at the dinner. He hasn't won it.
No, he hasn't won it.
Yeah, I don't know who all's won it.
Well, it's those two. We know it's those two. I don't think. Look, I think at that level. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea, but I wouldn't think anybody would be adversarial with these guys. They're all just golfers. I mean, some guys make financial decisions that are different than others. I don't think anybody takes it personally, especially at the Champions Dinner. I could be wrong about that though, but I mean, would you care if you won the Masters one year and say, you were friends with at the time Dustin Johnson, and he won the Masters and then he went off to play on another tour, and then a year or so later you had dinner at the Masters. This is about the Masters Club, man. This is not. Yeah, they're not. I don't think there's going to be any issue.
Well, you have a signed seat. So I'm curious who had to sit beside those guys.
Okay. Well, Mickelson is more outspoken than DJ. You won't get him to say anything, but Phil Mickelson's not afraid to say anything. And I think he's on some diuretic something. He looks different. He doesn't look healthy.
He looks very different.
Well, he looks like he's lost a lot of weight. Maybe that's by design. But at any rate, you're going to have, to me, I think the group to watch goes off. If I were there and I had a choice of who would I want to watch tee off tomorrow, it would be at 10:42. And it would be the group of John Rahm, Justin Thomas, and Cameron Young, because I think these guys can shape the ball on a right to left course. Remember, the Augusta is all right to left. And so you want to see some draws. You want to see some long shots. You look at that group at 10:42. Those guys will smoke the ball. Every one of them hits at 320. Every one of them. So that's or more. So that's a group. I also like the Sam Burns, Tom Kim, and Rory McIlroy group. I think that's a good group to watch. And I tell you, man, I think any one of 5 guys can win this. That's what I think.
Just 5. Okay. So I'm going to let you pick first. Go.
Scheffler.
Oh, shocker. I'm going to go Colin Morikawa.
Yeah, he's a good player. I don't know if he ain't going to win this tournament. But he's a very good player. He could. I shouldn't say he's not. I'm going with Scotty, though. All right, second pick is I'm going with Spieth. Give me the Easter Bunny. Yeah.
All right, you take Jordan Spieth.
Mhm.
I will take Tony Finau.
Really? You think he's got you think he's got the mentality to win this? He does, perhaps. I don't think his putting's good enough, but maybe I'm wrong. Cam Young's never won on tour. He's one of the most talented players on the tour. He hasn't won, but I'm not going to pick him either. I'm going to go with Justin Thomas because he's my guy, and I think he can break through here.
I will go with Xander Schauffele.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going with guys that have never won it. How about that?
Well, I get you. JT's not won it. Are we just picking 3 or are we doing more?
No, we're going to pick one more.
Give me. It was between Rahm and McIlroy. I want to take Rory. I think this could be his breakthrough year.
All right, I'll take Max Homa.
I mean, you got to pick the guys who are playing the best golf. You can't. I don't think anybody realistically is gonna just. I don't know. These guys are playing so well. Scheffler, Rahm. I just can't see anybody beating these guys that we haven't talked about much. QB, I've also got the XFL power ratings if you're interested.
Oh, everybody's been on there waiting on the edge of their seat for that.
Well, I've been doing a lot of work on this. So the power ratings are such as we've got 2 divisions in the XFL, the North and the South. North has got a better record than the South, but right now I'm going to stay with DC as 1. I've got Seattle as 2 ahead of St. Louis, taking them 3. Houston's fallen down to 4 with 3 straight losses. I was really having a hard time between you guys in Vegas at 5, but since they beat you last time, I'll take Vegas at 5, and I'll take Orlando at 6, San Antonio at 7, and the Arlington Renegades, whose offense is it should be banned from watching. I've got them at 8, and I think you guys will beat Arlington by 2 touchdowns this weekend.
Well, we'll see. The head ball coach will be there. Stoopsy's the coach. Well, Scotty's his tight end coach, so everybody will be there. We've given away a bunch of tickets to our listeners. Again, if you want tickets to the game, you just send not Facebook Live. Go to Messenger on our Facebook page and send your email, and we'll get you tickets.
Well, I'll tell you this. You guys win the next 2 games at home against Arlington and at San Antonio next week. You then are the 2nd team in the South, and the top 2 teams from both the North and the top 2 teams from the North and South go. So it's amazing how Houston and Orlando could possibly go, but either Seattle or St. Louis are going to be left out of the playoffs.
Yeah, I would. Seattle's way better than St. Louis. St. Louis, their record is good, but as I've told you many times, like I told you a couple of weeks ago, I watch tape on all these teams.
Yeah.
St. Louis is kind of like us, but they've gotten a lot of breaks. The reason we have such a bad record is because of special teams, but we got that fixed now. They fixed it, but we lost 2 games due to special teams.
Yeah, no fumbles and stuff like that. Early in the year.
I'm talking about breakdown. We've had 5 punt blocks.
Yeah, that's brutal. And you've also dropped a couple punts, haven't you, or kicks or something?
Yeah.
So that you put the defense on the 20. You put your defense on your own 20-yard line after a special teams miscue. You're going to lose. But St. Louis and Seattle, one of those teams likely won't be in the playoffs. It's going to be just 2 out of each division. So they've got a war over there. But I really think Arlington and San Antonio are beatable. You beat them, and you're 2nd behind Houston. Who knows? You may even catch them. So that's the XFL roundup here, and coming off the Masters picks. So I think we've got all our bases covered.
So JC, just so I understand, the Houston Roughneck gear that you ordered about 3 or 4 weeks ago, you left it in the box, or you sent it back, or what'd you do?
I said return to sender. Return to sender. I do like that oil derrick though logo they have. It's very cool. I like the DC logo. That's a cool logo with DC in their thing. And I think my favorite one is clearly the dragon. I mean, the dragon blowing fire. I mean, I'm not a Seattle guy, but their logo is great. So
they got some good logos. We got a text here on the Tighten Up Our text line from Jim. Jim says, guys, what would y'all be buying at the concession stand today at Augusta National?
Yeah, so my go-to has always been when I was there, a beer and a pimento sandwich.
for about $3.
$3, and I'd probably get 2 pimento sandwiches. They don't last long. They just basically spread the cheese on 2 loaves of white bread, wrap it up, and say, "Here, $1." And then you can go get a draft over here for $1.50, and off you go. It's fabulous. But there's a lot of choices, and the practice rounds are great. Today will be a special day with the par 3 challenge. But then tomorrow, they're out there early in the morning, and it's 4 days of golf heaven.
Who do you think wins the par 3 today?
Oh, gee, you can throw a dart and pick a guy there. I'll go with. Well, I don't even know.
Does every player in the field get to play on
that.
par 3?
Yeah, see, I don't think that's the case at all. No,
I don't either.
But I don't think that's the case. And remember too, you get some of the older guys. If Jack used to play it all the time, Billy Casper played in it at times. A lot of guys from the past play in that thing. Couples used to play. Fuzzy used to play in it. Fuzzy Zeller actually won this tournament years and years ago. It's amazing when you look at the history of this tournament. Repeat winners generally do not win in years that are so far apart. And the only 2 guys I can think of is Jack and Ben Crenshaw, who won it in different eras. And it's hard. It's just the course changes, things change, players get better, you get older, you don't have a better chance to win. But Ben Crenshaw won it as he was a much older guy, and Jack Nicklaus won it at age 45 or 6, I think.
I think it's 46. Before we get out of here, does Tiger make the cut?
Yeah, I want to say I think he makes the cut, but I don't think he's a factor. Just because he knows his way around that course as well as anybody. It's his favorite. That's what's he won it 4 times. I'm
going to say, oh gosh, there's so many good players, man. I don't know if he makes the cut or not.
Well, that's true. I'm just saying his score, his game, his knowledge of that course. He hasn't played in a month. He should, but walking, I'll tell you, for 4 days,
that's going to wear him out.
With that right leg, that course is the hardest. Could you imagine carrying somebody's bag for? You really got to be in shape. You really have to be in shape. There, the slope there is incredible. I can't wait. And who did you say, by the way? Just jumping ship here. Who's Florida playing? They're playing Tennessee in baseball.
At Tennessee.
Yeah, I got to keep my eye on that. I think Tennessee played LSU last weekend. I know LSU won one of those games. I don't know who won the other 2, but that's going to be a good challenge for the Gators on the road. I want to see how they do against good pitching. Tennessee's very good.
All right, JC, we'll talk to you on Friday. JC joins us on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. Celebration points where the Gators go to celebrate with premium brands like Nike International, Diamond Center, Dave & Buster's, Bass Pro Shop, Regal Cinemas, Prime and Pearl, and the HBC's restaurant, Spurs Gridiron Grill. We'll see you at Celebration Point where the Gators go to celebrate. Going to take a time out, come back. Seth Harp takes over. You're watching and listening to PodUp Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. Making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Harp on Sports with you here on this Wednesday. What do we have in store for you on the second half of PodUp with Matthews in the morning? Neil Solondz, a voice of the Tampa Bay Rays, going to be joining us here in the next 7 to 8 minutes. Going to look at their 5-0 start, and there's some impressive things that they have done out of the gate. In this day and age for opening week of the Major League Baseball season, they've got starters. 4 of their 5 starters through their first 5 games went at least 6 innings. And it's so interesting because one of the things about the game speeding up has meant starters have stayed in the game longer. I think it's what's happened the first week of the baseball season, not just with the Rays, but across the league, has been just like a gigantic floodgate opening. Baseball can experiment, have some more ideas here. This is a radical change this year. And it's not only working, it's flourishing. There's a game last night that was 1 hour and 57 minutes. Now, you don't want to get to the point where it's too fast. I get it. It's one of those leisurely sit back, enjoy. But they've shaved a half hour, 40 minutes off this thing. And aren't the games more competitive? Aren't they more interesting? Aren't they more fun? So Neil Solondz is going to be joining us momentarily to dive into that. Of course, I and Neil will be joining you courtesy of the Titan MRI hotlines and Facebook Live. If you got a question for us, fire away. Courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. So there we go. Okay, before Neil joins us, a couple things. I finally got the Final Four information. Finally have the Final Four in terms of consumption stats as we put this misery in our rearview mirror. The women's Final Four continues to have a little bit of controversy. Something broke last night on this. But here are your numbers. You ready for this? It's the least watched national championship game ever. Least watched national championship game ever. San Diego State, UConn, 14.7 million viewers. The next lowest watched national championship game ever, Villanova and Michigan, 16 million. Kansas, North Carolina last year, 17.1 million. So not only was UConn San Diego State the least watched national championship game ever, it was the least watched by a couple of million. How about that? The least watched national championship game by a couple million. And then you look at the Final Four, due to UConn, Miami, down 26% from Saturday night. Now that's because it was up against Duke, North Carolina the year before, but it's the least watched semifinal since the Iraq War affected Syracuse, Texas. Yikes. Yikes. How about that for consumption? All right, here he is, voice of the Rays, Neil Solondz, swinging in with us here on this Wednesday morning. Neil, thank you so much. I know you're in your hotel room right now. Can't thank you enough for swinging on with us. 5-0. 4 of the 5 starters have gone at least 6 innings. Kevin Kiermaier, Choi, a lot of guys exit stage right. Where does this organization continue to find these guys? And they're almost like the Chiefs in the draft. They just keep coming and coming and coming.
It's been a really good start. It's been a heck of a lot of fun, and thanks for having me on. The thing that they did, you talk about, players and cycling through. This actually is a group that more of the core is back than probably a lot of the years I can remember. I mean, they now have 8 players under multi-year contracts. They extended some key guys like Yandy Diaz, who hit a home run last night. And I really think the continuity is helping. They showed a lot of confidence in some young players, some of whom struggled last year with all the injuries they had.
It's kind of one of these things where we didn't know who was coming and going, right? It was one of these things that, okay, how long is this guy going to stay? And one of the question marks, right, is Randy Arozarena. Like, how long is he actually going to be with this organization long term? With the discussions with him, and I know what they did, at shortstop last year, and you lock up your young guy long term, similar to what the Braves did with Freddie Freeman about a decade ago, signing him 8 years, $140 million or whatever they did, paying him more now, saving later. What this core that you just mentioned, these guys coming back, signing these guys to long term deals, what type of year long? What type of package are we looking at here in terms of how long you expect these big names and big guys to stay together?
Well, I mean, Wander Franco is now on an 11-year contract, and this is year 2 of that. So, I mean, he's obviously going to be a core piece, but I think what's been encouraging is, the other young players and how they're playing so far this year. Josh Lowe struggled in his rookie year, and he came into camp. Just conversationally, I thought that he was different. And he's gotten off to a good start. And Luke Raley has gotten off to a tremendous start. And he was a guy who was out of options, who had been up and down and found a tough go of it. But, I think you look at core pieces, obviously Wander Franco is one. Yandy Diaz is a guy they signed to an extension. And Brandon Lau is a guy who is signed long-term. And those are 3 of the 4 top guys in your lineup. And they're playing nearly every day. And, I think they help solidify things at the top to allow some of the young guys I mentioned, like Josh Lowe, Luke Raley, et cetera, to be able to feel like they don't have to do too much. And, the lineup to me is a very deep one right now, and they're healthy, and hopefully it remains that way.
You've been around the game for a long time. This is now your gig, right? You are covering this team on a daily basis, play-by-play wise. And I just wonder, from a guy that worked his way up through the system where you're dealing with 3.5-hour, 4-hour games, and now you get this baseball product, Neil, that all of a sudden it's not only shorter, it's a lot shorter. There's a game last night that was an hour and 57 minutes. In terms of broadcast style and what you put into it, what do you make it from a broadcasting standpoint, Neil, the pace of this thing now?
It's definitely, it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of evolve, knowing what you can and can't do on radio in a shorter period. I mean, we had a 2-hour and 45-minute game yesterday, but it was 10-6. When you see 16 runs scored, you don't anticipate a 2-hour and 45-minute game. And, I obviously saw how quickly the Marlins game was moving in a 1-0 affair. There's definitely a pace and a tempo to it, which is kind of new school, but also very old school. You look back at the day, a lot of the games were in that 2 to 230, 240 range. So it's kind of gotten back to that, which, as a broadcaster, it's called a game of adjustments for players. It's a game of adjustments for us. I think we're just trying to find out, and figure out what stories can we get in between pitches? How much more concise do we have to be? And I think that'll happen over time. Fortunately, Andy Fried has been doing this for a long time too, and he's a great partner to work with, and he makes it easy. And the organization has been tremendous, and obviously you have a great product. I mean, that's the first thing. This ball club is really fun and entertaining, and it makes it easy to get ready to broadcast every day.
He is Neil Solondz, voice of the Rays, with us here, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, as we look at we're almost first week of the Major League Baseball season. The Rays sitting there unblemished, undefeated. I made mention 4 of the 5 starters have gone at least 6 innings. With the exception of was Josh the only one that didn't go 6? He went 4 or 3. In terms of the pace, is this going to leave starting pitchers in games longer?
It might. I think the Rays are always an organization, especially early on in the season, where they're going to be careful with how much of a load that they put on their starting pitchers that first month and a half, because I think Kyle Snyder, who's a terrific pitching coach, has always been try to be smart about kind of establishing a base. Okay, we're going to build up. We're going to add innings as we go. So maybe later on in the year, you'll start to see guys go 7, 8, and even 9 if they remain this efficient. The first game of the series against Washington, Drew Rasmussen threw 6 innings and 66 pitches. I don't think that's only tempo. I just think it's great strike throwing. When Jeffrey Springs struck out 12 on Sunday against Detroit, he threw 18 of 19 first pitch strikes. And when you're beginning strike 1 or strike 2 on most of the hitters you're facing, guess what? You're going to put them on their heels. You're going to be in control of the count. And it's not only the tempo, but the fact that you're throwing strike 1 that makes it that much harder.
I'd have been at that game instead of the Gator game on Sunday, where Auburn pitchers walked 15, Neil. Gators hitters in a 4+ hour affair. Neil Solondz with us here, PodUp with Matthews in the morning. I wonder, through the first week, there are some household names, there's some fan favorites that are gone. But as you mentioned, Wander Franco, let's face it, he is the guy, right? He's the Evan Longoria now of this franchise where give him a 10, 11-year deal. He's the guy at short for the next decade. We mentioned a Rose Arena that, still what player control on him for 3 years or team control still on him for 3 years. Who else out there right now, just from your knowledge in the system coming up through, as you mentioned, this core's together, looking at the minor league, the Rays have one of the best minor leagues in baseball too. So what else should we expect to see? I know it's a long journey, but these guys seem to be popping up all the time.
Yeah, and obviously you hope that the core that you currently have on the big league roster remains in place. Look, Jose Siri is playing really, really well the first handful of games, as the new center fielder, as a guy who came over in a trade last year. He's driven in RB runs in all 4 games that he started so far, which is the first time he's done that in his major league career. But you take a look at the system, and especially at AAA, it's a loaded roster, whether it's Curtis Mead, a kid from Australia, Kyle Manzardo, first baseman who was the minor league player of the year last year, or Oslevis Basabe, who they got in the Nathaniel Lowe trade a couple of years back. All 3 of those guys are in AAA. And if there is a need at some point this year, I definitely think any of those 3 are capable of helping the Rays in some way, shape, or form. And then there's also Jonathan Aranda, who came up and performed fairly well the first time he came up last year. So I think the Rays have some depth, and that's really important because while they're carrying 26 guys now, I think anyone who follows the Rays know that, they have to be a deeper team than most because they're not going to have the same star power as Boston or New York just because of the resources. So the drop off from one player to the next, from player 1 to player 40, can't be as wide as it is with New York. And because of that, the Rays have assembled a really deep group, and I think it's a deep group that's going to be effective all year.
PodUp with Matthews in the morning. He is Neil Solondz. I am Seth Harp here with you on this Wednesday. PodUp with Matthews in the morning is a service of Ruse Orga State Farm. Ruse Orga State Farm office, a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go in the right direction with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ograinsurance.com, 352-240-1779. That is 352-240-1779. A couple more for you, Neil. One of the things that is always this looming cloud, right, is the stadium and a new stadium. St. Pete, Tampa, Ybor, and then was 3 months ago, we saw legitimate plans, a legitimate, proposal that, okay, we're going to put it in St. Pete and we're going to build this whole area up around it. You look at teams talking about new stadiums in baseball and the expansion of baseball. We know Oakland's a mess. They can't even come close to it. We're not even seeing any movement at all. It seems like in Tampa, at least there's some discussion on this now, pointing in some direction here. I mean, you work for the organization. You're the voice of this team. What can you tell us about a new permanent home for the Rays?
I think the goal all along has been to keep this team in Tampa Bay and get it positively resolved. And I think, at least from here, and I try and stay as focused on the team first and let the smarter people figure out the rest of it. But I think, all signs are pointing in a positive direction. And I think there's, cooperative efforts to get this job done. So, I'll focus on the field. I'll let the smarter people figure it out. But at least from what I'm hearing, and what Stu Sternberg, our principal owner, said on opening day, the hope is that this can get resolved by the end of the calendar year. And hopefully it means that the Rays are here to stay for many, many, many years to come in Tampa Bay.
Does anybody have a preference on what side? I mean, how big of a deal is that? I mean, I get down there a couple times for games, and so I'm coming from 2 hours away. So the extra 15 minutes on the bridge on a Saturday or Sunday, but I know on a daily basis that can be a grind.
Whatever is whatever the team feels is best, I'm good with. I think that I think it just to have it positively resolved and know that you have everything taken care of and that you're in a good place. I mean, I love both sides of the Bay. And I've been here for a while, so I appreciate our fans and how passionate they are about it and where they want to see it located. And hopefully it just gets resolved in a positive way soon. And we can just, for me, I'm focused on the baseball first, and the rest of it, I'm sure will take care of itself.
Okay, I mean, he said we're only a week in, and what have we determined so far? Well, at least the Marlins are atrocious. You look around the league and the Nationals. There are teams that we thought were going to be good that look good. There's teams that are struggling, and then there are the Rays who are undefeated. So I sit here and I ask you, it's like I thought they'd be good. I thought they'd be right in the playoff hunt again. I mean, the Yankees with all this talent that they have, you think, okay, they'll probably win the division, but all of a sudden you take kind of swing back a little bit and go, okay, well, look, this Rays team, they've reloaded and here we go again. Talent-wise, structure-wise, you've been around this team for a while now. The World Series team from 2000, the team that got upset by the Red Sox in 2021. Where does this team, Neil, stack up from what you've seen compared to some of these teams over the course of the last decade?
A lot is going to depend on health. I think that's a big part of this because last year the Rays won 86 games and were one of the most 5 banged up teams in the entire sport. Yet they still made the playoffs for a 4th straight year. I feel that if they're healthier, especially in the position player side, it could be one of the better clubs the Rays have had. And obviously 2008, 10, 20, all those years where they were division champs, and even 21, they were very, very good. I think this team has probably as much depth as any of them. And I think people also don't realize there is star power. While people will talk about other players in the division and other players across the sport, Shane McClanahan has the ability to be a superstar, top of the rotation guy. When Tyler Glasnow gets healthy, same thing. Wander Franco is an electric player. Randy Arozarena is an electric player. They're all, to me, potential top 100 players in the sport. And if you've got 4 or 5 guys that fit that bill, plus a really deep roster, you can make a long run if you're healthy.
I get it's early. It's early, but I'm trying to find holes, or it's a team that's not built like it's like, oh, our right fielders only, our corner outfielders are only hitting 271. Let's find somebody who can hit 290. Those things usually roll into place in July, right, where we need more power production out of this and that. If you had to circle a couple of areas, Neil, or look at a couple of areas that you think that, I don't know, I don't want to get into the trade market right now. It's only April, for crying out loud. But areas that you're going to be watching for improvement, how about that? What'd you say?
The areas that I'm going to look at are overall starting pitcher and pitching depth. Because, for instance, last night, Josh Fleming, would be the first to say he did not have a great start in place of Tyler Glasnow. And I look at, the guys who were competing with him for the 5th spot, whether it was Luis Patino or Cooper Criswell or Taj Bradley or Yanni Chirinos, none of them had really good starts the first time around in AAA Durham. So, I want to see some of those guys start to excel so that you have lots of options if you have another injury, because injuries are bound to happen. And I think the same goes, I think I feel a little more confident about some of the relievers that are at the AAA level right now. The Rays are so built on starting pitching, and the 4 you mentioned, Rasmussen, Eflin, McClanahan, Springs, have been so good. You want to make sure that there's not a major drop off, so you don't have to get too creative until Tyler comes back. If you have an injury when Tyler comes back, I think you're in a really good spot. But in this kind of month and a half period where you're waiting for him, you just hope that you can keep those 4 big horses healthy.
I'm going to ask you your plan with Tyler Glasnow as things go forward here. Is this going to be one of these things where he's going to spend a couple weeks, single A for 2 games, double A? How's this going to look when that time does come?
I'm not 100%, but I would think that they're going to make sure that they build him up properly, that when he's ready to join the Rays, he's built up to 5 or 6 innings like the rest of the starting pitchers. And the injury itself, I felt bad for him because I know how hard he works. There's very few guys in the sport who work as hard as Tyler Glasnow does to stay in shape and prepare. But because of the fact that he was coming off Tommy John surgery, he probably was going to have an innings limit. And the fact that he will miss the first month and change of the season, maybe they don't have to put the brakes on him near the end of the year or monitor his innings as carefully. Because he's missed this time. So I'm hoping that it's somewhat of a blessing in disguise for the Rays as a whole. And hopefully once Tyler is healthy, he's healthy the rest of the year too.
All right, Neil, how long does this last? We looking at What's the record to start a season? Is it 14? I can't remember what it is. Is it 15? I can't remember what it is to start a season. I know the record on the other end is 0-19 to start a season. So what are we looking at here? Can this thing get to double digits?
Let's worry about today. I mean, I start with today and then move on to the next. It would be great to get another win going into an off day, allow everybody to kind of catch their breath, and then things really pick up because you're going to play games every day for almost 2 weeks thereafter. And I think you have 3 off days in a 55-day period. So, that part of it is going to be really, really challenging. So as many wins, Andy and I always like to say, as many wins as you can bank and put yourself in a really good spot, because every team is going to go through a tough stretch. The further you are ahead of the game, the better off you're going to be in the big picture.
Is Neil Solondz, voice of the Tampa Bay Rays. Of course, the Rays in action this afternoon. And first pitch, 1 o'clock. And you can hear that game here in Gainesville on ESPN 98.1 FM, 850 AM WRUF with first pitch, a little about 105. 105-ish, 110-ish, and you'll hear Neil and Andy on the call coming up this afternoon, ESPN Gainesville, and of course, on all our properties. So there you go. Neil, thanks so much. I know you got to get checked out of the hotel here, so you got about 15 minutes to get checked out. Thanks for giving us some time here on this Wednesday morning. We appreciate it. Have a great call this afternoon.
You got it. Thanks for having me on.
There you go. Neil Solondz with us here on PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Got to thank Neil for swinging by and joining us here this morning. And again, where we go with this on the station, and what I've always tried to do with ESPN 98.1 FM 850 AM WRUF is try to give you guys something every single day at night to listen to, game wise, play-by-play wise, because different stations, some stations gravitate more towards talk shows, some stations gravitate more towards play-by-play, and you want that mix. When we're off the air, in terms of our talk shows at 6 p.m., I, load up with games. And today we got a day game for baseball. And I think here, especially early on in the year, how well the Rays are playing. Yeah, let's go for it. So at 1 p.m. today, Rays will be in action. And then the Lightning are in action tonight on the station as softball or baseball don't play. And then we head back into the weekend where the Gators, of course, a Thursday-Friday series in baseball with the Tennessee Volunteers. So we can't thank Neil enough for swinging by. All right. Pot up with Matthews in the morning. A service of QC Kinetics. If you have joint pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back that won't go away, you need to check out QC Kinetics for long-lasting relief, not surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics with locations in Ocala, also now open in Gainesville, 352-400-4550, 352-400-4550. Okay, let's see here. Greg writes in, too bad Spectrum monopolizes the viewing market. I think it didn't help create a bigger fan base. I dropped Spectrum because of their prices. Yeah. But look, what's funny about this? And this is, just media consumption at all. There used to be a place, right, where you could go. It was like, I'm cutting cable. I'm tired of cable. I've had enough of cable. I'm done. Satellite, I'm done. And I get it. I get it. But it's funny that, the a la carte is always more expensive than if you just buy the option, right? IHOP, Denny's, the Grand Slam breakfast, whatever you may be getting. 2 pancakes, 2 links of sausage, 2 patties, 2 bacon, 2 eggs. All right. If you order that all separately, it costs more than the bundle. Now we're to the point, it's like, well, I've got Netflix here. I've got Hulu here. I flip over here on my Fire Stick to get this. I swing back over to DirecTV and it ends up costing more than it did originally. Yeah, but you're right. These markets, it's weird. It's weird for me because when I watch things on at work on the TV and the station, I get different commercials than I do at home. It's just, yeah. That's why if you have a business, invest in radio. It's not different on it. It's the same everywhere. You go, no matter where you're listening. All right. I brought up the Final Four as we pivot here and can't thank Neil enough for swinging by. The ratings are in, the numbers are in, and I mentioned it's the least watched national championship game ever by a couple of million. To give you a little bit of an idea, 13.7 million watched the national championship game. The most watched national championship game ever was Indiana State and Michigan State with Bird and Magic. Like 34 million people. And you look at the 10 least watched championship games, they're all from the 2000s. They're all from the 2000s. And some of them, I mean, there's some big names on here for some of these games. And what's changed? Well, look, I mean, the ratings will be up for the first few rounds, but then you get to the final four and it's just not, well, look, the first few rounds, you've got 16 games going on, right? You have 16 games a day on those Thursdays and Fridays, and there's more teams involved, more networks, but you're spreading it out. I mentioned UConn, San Diego State, 14.7 million. It's the least watched championship game ever. Villanova, Michigan from 2018, 16 million. Kansas, North Carolina last year, 17.1 million, but that's still 2.5, 3 million more people that watched it. You go all the way back to 2008, 19 million for Kansas and Memphis. And then, at least I was looking through the numbers yesterday, the 3 most watched championship games ever were Bird and Magic, Indiana State, Michigan State. And then Michigan and Seton Hall, curveball. And then in the 90s, it was the Fab Five against Duke. So those numbers are like 30 million. I mean, massive numbers that are watching that. Almost, in some cases, more than 2.5 times as much that watched the other night. So without household names, and the juxtaposition of that is the women's game. It didn't quite get there. The women's championship game had 9.9 million. This had 14.7. One's on ESPN in the afternoon on Sunday. The other is at night. And look, on the network as well. And all these factors line into this thing that in order to succeed now, just like in football, if you don't have a quarterback, you're not winning squat. You're not. You don't have a quarterback, you're not winning squat. You're not winning anything. Nothing. I mean, look at the AFC alone, where you have Mahomes, and Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow, and Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. If you don't have one of those guys, you're the Titans. You get no shot, none. You're not winning anything. And then the Ravens, you can trade Lamar Jackson. You need one of those guys. Well, now, look, oh boy, deep breath. The Ravens trade Lamar Jackson, you're trading away one of those guys. Greg writes, in the 9:20 start time didn't help either. It's been at 9 o'clock for 15, 20 years. It's always been after 9 o'clock. It's one of these things that people constantly complain about. And they do that because, do you realize the national championship game in basketball ends earlier than Monday Night Football? Greg, it's a personal preference, right? Because we talk about how late the games are and how late they are and how late it is. It's a late start. I get it. But you do realize the Ohio State-Georgia game ended after midnight on New Year's Eve. Right? Ohio State-Georgia ended at midnight. Some food for thought. Just some food for thought. One other thing. On tomorrow's show, I want to talk about this. This is going to be fun. Kyle Crooks and I are going to be in the second half of the show tomorrow. Hugh Freeze, now that he's at Auburn, he wants to open up the spring game. So at Auburn, it's not, he doesn't want just an inter squad game for their spring game. He wants Auburn to actually play like UAB and Troy in the spring. Like the spring game will actually be a game. Ooh, I like that. I do. I like that. I like that a lot. Think about how much more fun and interesting it would be if you had yourself a situation where in the swamp that Florida played FAU in the spring game, played somebody else. You're not going to get look, it's going to have to be somebody that doesn't draw anything at their spring game, because you're not going to get you're not going to get let's get Texas to come here. Let's get Notre Dame to come here. They're not going to give up what they're just not going to do it. And you're not going to play back to back. You'd have to be a home. Then you get too tricky. But I would love to see Florida take on FIU. I would love to see Florida play FAU in their spring game. Now, I don't know how you'd regulate it. I don't know exactly what that would look like. But Hugh Freeze has done some dirty things. But this is a good one. I like this idea from Hugh Freeze. A spring game against another D1 school in your state rather than making it an inter-squad game. than a split squad game. I actually like that idea. We're going to talk about that tomorrow on the show. This came out last night. I want to leave you with this. Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Iowa, went on ESPN yesterday. Jeremy Schaap said no problem with what Angel Reese did. A-okay. Fine. It looked like they were in good shape. We were in good shape heading into last night until Angel Reese said that LSU's not going to go to the White House now because Jill Biden invited both teams, even though the first lady, I said that was wrong. Shouldn't invite. No, the winners get to go. She came out and was like, yeah, okay, LSU can come. And Angel Reese said, no, we're not going to go to your house. We're going to go to the Obama's house. Except the former president didn't invite them. So now we're heading down a different path. What was taunting? It's okay. Is it okay? It was in the moment. It was in the moment is what we heard. Now we're playing the I'm not going to go to the White House game because not for anything. Look, it wasn't anything that the Biden said critical. She just wanted to invite both teams. Like, nope. Oh, okay, you're right. Okay, we're going to invite, LSU. Nope. Not going to go there. She's big. Ooh. The story that just keeps on chugging along. I thought it was over after Caitlin Clark went on ESPN yesterday afternoon and said, look, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Oh, really, really quick. I know these guys are going to get on me here because I'm over now. If you're ESPN, SEC Network, Big Ten Network, you guys get together. The start of the season next year. I looked on the schedule, November 7th. Madison Square Garden's open. New York City, Iowa, LSU. Start the season in women's college basketball next year. It's a Tuesday because you got Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, college football, NFL football. If you have the first Tuesday in November, for the love of God, get LSU and Iowa to play each other to start the year. Get LSU and Iowa have to start the season next year. Just like in the NFL, the Chiefs are probably going to play what? The Bengals or the Bills or somebody like that to start the year? Get them together. Come on. We'll learn out on the schedule. So what? Get LSU. If LSU and Iowa don't start the college football season next year, Greg, Dr. Jill disrespected them. She said she was sorry and then tried to invite him. No, all right. Guess being the bigger person doesn't exist anymore. Need to thank everybody for stopping by. Need to thank Neil Solondz, voice of the Rays, of course, Shane and JC. We'll be back tomorrow. This has been PodUp with Matthews in the morning. I'm Seth Harp. Enjoy your Wednesday, everyone.